In a wide valley sheltered by towering cliffs, a Neanderthal man stood gazing across the landscape. His heavy brow furrowed in concentration as he scanned for signs of game. The hunt had been difficult lately, and food was scarce. His people, strong and resilient, had faced many challenges, but the chill in the air was different this time, a signal of harsher days to come. As he moved silently through the grass, his sharp senses caught something unexpected. In the distance, he saw figures moving, humans, but not like his own. They were taller, with slimmer frames, their movements swift and graceful. He crouched low, watching as these strange Homo sapiens set up camp near the river. Their tools were unfamiliar, and their voices, though soft, carried an unfamiliar melody. Curiosity stirred within him. His people had heard rumors of these others, but this was the first time he had seen them up close. After a moment's hesitation, he decided to approach. He was not one to shy away from the unknown. With careful steps, he made his way down the slope, his presence soon noticed by the newcomers. The Homo sapiens, a small group of hunters and gatherers, paused in their work. One among them, a woman with dark hair and striking green eyes, stepped forward. Her gaze was steady, but not unkind. She raised her hand in a gesture of peace, signaling to the others to remain calm. The Neanderthal stopped a few feet away, towering over the humans. His chest rose and fell heavily, the cold air turning his breath to mist. For a moment, there was silence, an unspoken understanding passing between them. He gestured to the sky, then to the river, his movements slow and deliberate. The woman nodded, understanding that he meant no harm. She pointed to the fish they had caught, offering him some. Hesitant at first, he stepped forward and accepted the gift. In return, he pulled out a piece of dried meat from his pouch and handed it to her. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the ancient barrier between their two worlds seemed to thin. Despite their differences, they shared the same struggles: hunger, survival, and the changing world around them. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the Neanderthal sat by their fire, listening to their soft laughter and stories. Though their language was foreign to him, the warmth of their company was something he understood deeply. For a time, they were no longer strangers but fellow humans bound by the same earth and sky. When morning came, the Neanderthal rose to leave. The Homo sapiens watched him go, knowing they might never meet again. But the encounter left a mark, a memory of a brief, peaceful connection between two human species, both shaped by the forces of nature yet destined for different paths. 2. A winter shelter. The wind howled through the dense pines, carrying with it the bite of winter. A small band of Homo sapiens huddled together under a makeshift shelter, trying to keep warm as the storm worsened. They had been traveling for days, following the herds, but the sudden snow had caught them off guard. Among them was a young hunter, his sharp eyes scanning the surrounding forest for danger. He knew these lands were not just home to his people, but to the Neanderthals as well. The two groups had crossed paths before, sometimes with tension, but mostly in silence, each respecting the other's distance. Tonight, though, his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps crunching through the snow. From the shadows emerged a Neanderthal woman, her massive frame almost blending into the snowy landscape. She was wrapped in furs, her pale skin flushed from the cold. Her breath came out in great puffs, but her expression was calm. The Homo sapiens hunter stood, his hand instinctively reaching for his spear, but something in her stance stopped him. She was not a threat. The Neanderthal woman gestured toward the shelter, then to the sky where the storm raged on. Her meaning was clear: she needed shelter. The hunter glanced at his companions, who murmured among themselves, uncertain. But the cold was relentless, and in these harsh conditions, even the most ancient divisions between them seemed insignificant. With a nod from the hunter, they made space for her. The Neanderthal woman crouched near the fire, her large hands outstretched toward the warmth. She pulled a piece of flint from her pouch and added it to their dwindling supplies, showing them how to strike it against stone for better sparks. The Homo sapiens watched, fascinated by her skill. As the night wore on, they shared stories, not in words, but in gestures and simple sounds. The Neanderthal woman showed them the way her people tied strong knots with sinew, while the Homo sapiens shared dried berries and nuts, a food the Neanderthal had never tasted. In this brief moment, the storm outside seemed less threatening, and the fire between them glowed brighter. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the forest was silent once more. The Neanderthal woman rose, nodding her thanks before disappearing into the snow-covered trees. The Homo sapiens hunter watched her go, knowing that their paths might cross again or perhaps never at all. But in that single night, they had shared something vital, a connection born from necessity, yet filled with the shared essence of their humanity. Both groups continued on their way, each carrying a small part of the other with them, their futures entwined in ways neither could fully understand.